Welcome back to the movie recap. Today's movie will be a 2014 British war drama film titled Testament of Youth. So sit back, relax and enjoy the video. The movie begins on Armistice Day. The British crowd is celebrating, waving the Union flag, except for one. Vera Britain feels defeated even though their country wins the war against Germany. She is from an upper middle class family who owns a successful paper mill in Macclesfield. However, the violence and chaos of World War I changed her peaceful life forever. She passes through a swarm of people and finds herself in front of a painting that transports her to 4 years ago. She lets her mind wander, remembering when water drowned her in dark silence. It is a lovely day by the lake. Her brother, Edward, jokes that there are rats under the deep end, but Vera keeps swimming despite Victor's warning and protest. Thus, in horror, he quickly jumps into the water to prevent her from getting hurt. The three end up laughing as they dry themselves by the shore. However, their laughter dies down as they get near their house. In front of their estate is a delivery truck that makes her mad. She storms inside their foyer and sees men setting up an expensive piano in their living room. Her father welcomes her and asks if she can play a piece for their guests. Vera contains her anger as she plays a piece for them. However, she soon leaves as she cannot hide her true feelings. Her father follows her and is confused why she is acting up after receiving a gift from him. He does not understand that his daughter is an intelligent young lady and a raging feminist. The piano costs as much as a year at Oxford, and she argues that buying the instrument only limits her opportunities as a woman. She throws her books and writings through the window as a sign of rebellion. A moment later, when her emotions cool down, she goes to their backyard to pick up her books. Their guest, Roland, joins her, which scares Vera. Thus, she asks him to leave politely. However, he insists on staying with her. He then names a few authors that she reads and calls them romantics. She is confident they barely influence her line of thoughts, and he agrees with her as he recalled the scene a while ago. However, she takes offense at his words and accuses him of finding the situation amusing. She then leaves, but in her hurry and irritation, she leaves a couple of books and a poem. He bends down to pick them and reads her poetry. He smiles and is clearly impressed by her. The following day, Vera heard Edward trying to convince their father to let her study at Oxford. At first, their father is stubborn and reasons that her scholarship is an added expense, but her brother offers to contribute his allowance. Her father feels she is in the hallway, listening to their conversation, so he calls her. Eventually, he casually allows her to pursue her education at her dream school. Vera is thrilled with the decision and proceeds to study for the entrance examination. One day, Vera, Edward, Roland, and Victor walk a long meadow into a calm river. In their playful conversation, she is stunned to discover that Roland's mother is a novelist and writes for the papers. This time he is the one who accuses her of misjudging his personality. She defends herself, but in the middle of their harmless argument, he spills that he has researched details about her and read one of her poems. However, she feels embarrassed by his comment, which ruins her mood. Thus, Victor invites them to go home and have some drinks. Roland and Vera walk side by side when he tells her he doesn't know that she keeps her writing a secret. He also compliments her poem, saying it moved him with its beauty. He also confesses that he wants to write too but is afraid that he is living in his mother's shadow. On the other hand, she speaks of her dreams of making writing her profession. Their eyes meet as he genuinely encourages her to write, an intimate moment for two intellectuals. Later that night, she can't stop thinking about him when she notices that he slips his poem under her door. The following day, Edward and his two male friends bid their goodbyes as they head for the train to go to the military. Vera gives Victor and him a peck on their cheeks while Roland asks for her thoughts about his poem. She chooses to be honest and admits his poetry lacks personality. She tells him that she cannot find Roland in his writing. He accepts her review and steps out off the porch. Vera hurriedly writes a letter to Edward asking him to pass her apology to Roland. She is concerned that she might have been too harsh with her criticism. However, the young man writes to her reassuringly that he is far from discouraged. Instead, he is up for the challenge of showing her a better poem soon. While the boys are serving in the army, Vera goes to Somerville College with a chaperone to take her entrance exam. However, Vera is unaware that the test requires an essay in Latin. Time pressure makes her decide to translate the text into German. After the bell rings, Miss Britton runs after the professor administering the exam. She reveals her trouble and almost begs for consideration. The professor dismisses her and leaves Vera almost hopeless in passing the exam. The young men return from the military, and the mailman delivers Vera's admission letter to Oxford. She is so nervous and is very pessimistic about the result. Thus, she lets her younger brother read it first. Fortunately, her brilliance gets her to Oxford. She quickly makes her way toward her lover to share the good news. However, Roland's mother's ignorance about her existence cuts off her excitement. She excuses herself from the group, but Roland follows her to a pavilion in the garden. She faces him and spats her frustration about their relationship. Thus, he asks to make things between them official. They are about to kiss when her mother comes into view. He asks permission if he can take her on a date with a chaperone. Mrs. Britton agrees while dragging her daughter away from him. Vera's much-awaited day arrives. She meets with Roland at the train station. He brings her to a theater house and art gallery. The chaperone gets in between them. Thus, Vera and Roland run away from each other. She yells at them their kiss on the museum's balcony. The two laugh to themselves, and he promises her that he will also study at Oxford. Yet, England needs more force from the army and is recruiting more young men. War propagandists plant in people's minds that it is an honor and a duty to fight for the country. Therefore, Vera helps Edward in convincing their father to let him enlist in the army. After serious consideration, their father supports her brother's decision. On the day of her departure for Oxford, Vera waits for Roland, but he comes to the train station without his luggage. He says he cannot join her at the university because he will join the army instead. It breaks her heart, but the nation should come first. So she proceeds to pursue her degree at Somerville College while he sets off on the battlefield. The same day Victor visits her in Oxford. The two of them sit by the sidewalk. He comforts and assures her that he supports her decision, even if it means dropping out of college to serve the country. He also tells her he cannot join the army due to his poor eyesight. She looks him in the eye and apologizes for the love she cannot reciprocate. He laughs and tells her about Molly. Vera is relieved that he is someone he likes. One morning, a mailman looks for Vera's professor. Instead, she receives a letter from the army that her professor's brother died in the war. The news fills the young scholar with dread for her lover's life. Every day she keeps track of all the fallen soldiers in the newspapers until she can no longer distract herself from her fear of a loved one's death. Thus, she takes the courage to quit studying and volunteer at the Red Cross. The professor tries to change her mind, reminding her that more women are willing to aid the sick who do not have Vera's privilege at Oxford. However, her books cannot keep her off of the front lines. Her new life as a nurse working in the military setting in England reveals the war's tragedy and horrors. She tends to all sorts of wounds and witnesses countless deaths. It toughens her heart, but she is still afraid of losing her brother and lover. Then comes a relief day when Roland takes 3 days off from the battlefield. However, the war's ugly scenes change how he sees their relationship. He keeps his distance from her. His actions hurt Vera, thus, she forces him to believe their reality. Roland confides in her about how one of his comrades with a fiancé died beside him. He fears he will end up like the fallen soldier and leave her with grief. Despite having the same worry, she comforts him that they will have a different ending. On that foggy day by the ocean, he proposes marriage to her, which she gladly accepts. He promises he will be back in December, and she looks forward to it. It is the month of Christmas, and Vera cannot wait to tie the knot with Roland. She is with her parents in a hotel where they are supposed to meet her fiancé and his family. Then one of the hotel staff has the telephone for her. Unfortunately, the person on the other end of the line cannot get a hold of herself and bursts into tears. The telephone falls from her shaking hand as the heartbreaking news confirms that no wedding will happen today because her fiancé died at war. A letter that explains the death of Roland came one morning. The sender writes that he died a quick death. However, Vera cannot believe his words. Thus, she pays the officer who wrote the letter a visit to the hospital where the medics admit him. Unfortunately, his arm is also injured, and he recounts the story of Roland's death. On December 22nd, their captain orders Roland's platoon to repair dirty and worn trenches. Roland inspects the place before bringing the restoration squad. He uses a different path because water overflows trenches. The Germans also know about the alternative routes. They aim to attack using a machine gun when they spot any activity from the enemy. That night, the first shot gets Roland. The volley punctures his stomach and penetrates his body. His battalion commander and a sergeant risk their lives by rushing out to carry him back to the trench. 20 minutes after, a doctor at the dressing station injects him with an ample dose of morphine, putting a temporary end to Roland's pain. The next day, a senior surgeon of the casualty clearing station at Louvencourt performs a complicated surgery on his abdomen. Unfortunately, however, the machine gun bullet also damaged the base of his spine. As a result, he will be paralyzed from the waist down even if he survives the attack. He is delusional but never talks about Vera in his hazy unconsciousness. Vera tells the officer that she is thankful for his honesty. Finally, delivery comes to Roland's house, and the package consists of his belongings. Vera desperately looks for something resembling his love. But in the pocket of his stale uniform are dried violets and a piece of paper. Vera mourns day and night, clutching the final poem of her lover. Then one day, Victor from France gets admitted to the infirmary where she is. He lost his eyesight and is badly wounded. She takes care of him and offers to be his eyes for as long as they live. He admires her and has known her far longer than Roland. Victor has always been in love with Vera and will do anything in his power to make her happy. However, he declines the marriage with her. Later at night, one of the nuns frantically calls for Vera. Victor complains about hearing noises in his head and dies before she reaches his hospital bed. Losing her best friend and fiancé affects Vera's mental state. Thus, she decides to transfer to France, where the war is at its peak, and closer to her younger brother. The infirmary there is different from England and Malta. Nurses admit wounded soldiers in a cottage and sometimes just lay them on the muddy ground, for there are no more rooms to accommodate them. One fearful evening, a German soldier whose neck is soaking in blood seeks comfort from a nurse who cannot understand his language. Vera walks beside him and listens to the soldier rumble in panic and death about the woman he loves. She offers him comfort until he dies. The morning after the Germans got near France, dozens of soldiers rush their comrades to the infirmary. Vera is attending to a cold soldier, and one of the officers talks about her brother. She runs to look for Edward's body and finds him unconscious in the mud. She quickly brings him inside the infirmary and cleans his wounds. At night, Edward is having a nightmare, thus, Vera takes the phonograph beside him. When he wakes up, he talks about an angel playing music to the brink of death. She successfully cures him, and Edward goes back to the front. Their father writes to the Red Cross in France, asking Vera to come home because her mother is in worse condition. However, she finds her mother in their kitchen in good health physically but is lonely. She stays in their house until the mail arrives. A loud cry echoes in every corner of their home as their father mourns the death of his son. The movie ends with England winning the war, and Vera speaks her mind against revenge on Germany. Where in honor of the death of the people they love, there should be peace and forgiveness. She continues studying at Oxford and, many years later, gets married to a good man. She has 2 kids and has become a writer. Testimony of Youth is a memoir of World War I. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this to help the channel out. Have a nice day.